Hello, everybody. I'm Valerie Gilchrist, and this is Esther's Purpose. I'm so excited to be broadcasting today with my guest, and I know you guys think every time she has a guest, she says it's a special guest. Yes, all my guests are special, but wait till you hear who I have today. But before I do that, I want to remind everybody that WYTV7 is a nonprofit organization. We broadcast out of Charlotte, North Carolina. When you give to us, those funds go to not only our ability to broadcast around the world, but even though we're a nonprofit, we also donate to other nonprofits to help them fulfill their mission as well. You can go to WYTV7, click that donate button and donate. You'd be surprised, $7 goes a long way. Now, let me introduce my guest to you today. My guest is Brian J. Oles. Brian wasn't born with a natural enthusiasm for public speaking. A burgeoning change agent in the industry, the Baltimore native inadvertently entered into the world of speaking when he delivered his first speech to the Morgan State University Toastmasters Club in 2006. Recalling this as one of his most defining life moments, Brian instantly connected to his passion when he found himself in front of a standing ovation at the conclusion of that speech. Identified as a curator of collaboration, Brian specializes in empowering rising professional speakers to create clarity, streamline systems, and cultivate the relationships needed to reach the unique audience they are called to speak to and serve. His passion for speaking, diversity, and building relationships led him to create Black Speakers Network, or BSN, a membership-based professional speaker development and empowerment association. With thousands of members, me being one of them, just want to tell you, around the world, BSN holds the distinction of being the most accessible and fastest growing development organization dedicated to serving underrepresented speakers at all levels in their career. With a deep appreciation for the artistry of speaking at the helm of his career, Brian J. Oles is defining success on his own terms. His impact is illustrated perfectly in the industry mate Zig Ziglar's quote, "It's not where you start, it's where you finish that counts." Brian, hello, how are you? And thank you for coming today.
Hello, Valerie. Thank you so much. And I am doing absolutely incredible. And I just want to let all your listeners know. And, when Valerie says she is a member, she is kind of underselling that because she's not just a member, she is the member. Like, I don't know of anybody else that is more connected, more tuned in, has given us the most feedback and gotten as much out of what we're doing with BSN. So Valerie, thank you for being a valued member, and thank you for the opportunity to share with your audience today. This is exciting.
All right. Yes, I'm excited too. Now, one of the reasons why, well, probably right now, this most significant reason that I brought Brian on is not just to let you all know, my audience, national and international audience, know about Black Speakers Network, but also Brian just released a book, Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate in the Speaking Industry. There's a foreword in here by George Fraser, and there is also in here Les Brown, actually, on the back of it. Here is what Les Brown had to say. So I'm trying to tell you that Black Speakers Network is not just some kind of fly-by-night organization, okay? This is a huge organization that's giving appreciated, really, people in this industry the ability to go out and speak and not just say anything or do it any kind of way, giving them the tools to be a professional speaker, do it well, and get your message across so that people will then be able to be inspired by what you have to say. So Brian, before we talk about this book, because I so want to talk about this book, because you know I'm excited about this book, I want you to give them a little bit of more background about BSN and why this is such a passion to you.
Yeah, so I can give a quick background to tie into that. So as Valerie mentioned, I am native from Baltimore, went to Morgan State University, and that story is very true. You know, if you had been sitting next to me in that small classroom in 2006, when I walked to the front of the room to give my very first speech in an organization called Toastmasters, you would have noticed a couple things. You probably, Valerie, if you were this close, you would have noticed my sweaty palms. You would have heard my shaking voice and just started thinking to yourself, is this guy going to faint, pass out? Like, what is actually happening? But, you know, I was giving my very first speech, and this was the very first meeting of Toastmasters, and that was my entry point into this public speaking, this professional speaking industry. And from there, three things actually happened. You know, I did survive the speech, obviously, so that was great. Number two, I realized everyone in the room was clapping, and that made me feel good. Later on, I found out that Toastmasters kind of like church, right? You know, we clap for everything. So it's like, if you bring your lunch to the meeting, they're like, Brian, great job. You know, they just try to encourage you and everything. And so, but it made me feel good at the time. But the third thing I realized, and perhaps the most important thing, was if I just survived my first presentation, I could give two. And two turned into four turned into 10. And I went on to speak outside of Toastmasters. I started hosting my own professional development events. And what I realized is that I enjoy the process of speaking, but I also, more so than speaking myself even, is helping other potential speakers and current speakers connect with the audience that they're called to serve. And so that seed was planted back in 2006 at Morgan State University here in Baltimore. And then from there, I went on to go into corporate America. I had a background as a corporate training professional, did that for a few years before transitioning into diversity and inclusion work. And now, so BSN, the genesis of that, was kind of at the intersection of all three of those worlds. Diversity, because looking around at the speaking industry, I had the question to myself, where are the speakers of color? And specifically, you know, where are the Black speakers? And we're out here. We're definitely out here. You know, Black Speakers Network now, yourself included, Valerie, we span 5,000 members across the United States and 13 countries. SN members around with 400 speakers there now. And so we know the appetite is there, but I was just looking around and I didn't see anything servicing us specifically. So I wanted to create something. And so with that, our mission still remains the same. We're here to equip, connect, and inspire the next generation of Black professional speakers. And when we say next generation, it's not focused on age. It's focused on people that raise their hand and say, hey, you know, I want to leverage my voice. You know, I have content, I have experience, I have a passion for something. And I know that there's an underserved market for this, and I want to help reach that person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, a lot of times we don't even realize what the genesis of what we do is. Sometimes we just kind of fall into it, but then there are times that we are not only just pulled, but we're pushed into it as well, depending upon what our passion is, what's really on our heart. So Brian, I want to read what Les Brown said about this book, and then I'm going to start asking you some questions about it, because I just read your chapter afresh this morning, and it just does something to me. It's like, that's going to be my devotional, I think, for a couple of weeks, is to read that, because that's just how much impactful it is to me. So what Les Brown has written here is, there are people waiting to hear your voice. You have an energy signature, and when you speak, there are people who are in a dark place right now, but when they hear your voice, they will come out into the light. Now, the reason why that quote was so important to me is, Brian, something you don't know that we haven't discussed is for ever since I was a little girl, I didn't like my voice. I didn't like my voice because my voice got a lot of attention, and because it's so strong. Now my voice has been like this ever since I came out of the womb. So if you can imagine me at 5 and my voice quality being like this and this strong and not knowing how to control it, yes, it was a problem. So my voice to me was always a curse all the way into my adult years. until I found out why was gifted with this voice. And then it was still, I just came to Black Speakers Network last year. Now, I've used it in ministry a lot. And so I really kind of thought, okay, well, that's it. And that's fine. I was good with that until I got connected with Black Speakers Network and found out, no, that is not the only arena for me. So I want you to talk about what caused you to birth this book, Speak Up. And I mean, the awesome thing is how many authors co-authored this book. So I want you to talk about the birthing of this book and how many people have come together, collaborated to create this awesome book.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing the story. That's powerful, and I think a lot of people need to hear that. And I know, hopefully, I'm not breaking up too bad. I know I'm broadcasted directly from a basement, a well-painted basement, by the way. But so if you miss something, just let me know, and then I'll fill it in. But I have a copy of the book here, and it truly is. I appreciate the term birth, because I think that anytime that you are thinking about taking something in your head and bringing it out into the world, it's very synonymous to the birthing process. It starts as, a tiny little seed, and then it germinates and it grows. And this is something that's been germinating for me for a very long time. Not everybody, but a lot of people have a goal of being an author, and I was no exception. And so, true to form, at Black Speakers Network, my entire purpose of creating a speakers network is to serve speakers and to be able to not just help speakers, but really to create a collaborative community of entrepreneurs. Because when you raise your hand, because again, we're not just talking about speaking, we're talking about people who are entering into the space of professional speaking. And when you are talking about professional speaking, essentially you're saying you want to start a business. And there's a couple things that we know. I actually went to undergrad. I did my undergrad degree in business and helped worked on a couple different projects throughout school. And one thing I know about business is that it can be a lonely process. A lot of entrepreneurs are first generation. I think we were just talking about that before the show started. First generation, there's not a lot of people in your family you could look to help you. A lot of people won't understand what it is that you are going after. And a lot of people don't necessarily, there's not a central repository for information. You go to Google, you go online, like there's so many different paths into this industry, and there's so many places you can get information. It could be confusing and overwhelming. And what do most people do when they get confused and overwhelmed? They slow down or they stop altogether. And so that's what we identified as a barrier for people actually getting into this industry. So what we wanted to do was create a low barrier of entry. That's why membership in BSN is only $15. We didn't want to create this big thing that people were, well, I'm not qualified for that. We want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody. And then from the book, we thought this was a excellent way to introduce. So we started BSN in 2016, and I made the decision to say, hey, this is absolutely, I didn't want to, because before I was doing events just kind of in the Baltimore area, and I didn't want it to just be a local organization. And so for a while, we didn't do in-person events. We just did virtual. And because we wanted to get the reach out. And across 2017, all of the thought leaders that contributed to those webinars are in this book. So that's where those 32 authors came from. These are individuals who are experts at their craft, whether that's crafting a signature message, getting exposure and visibility for yourself through social media, through traditional print advertisement, through having an opportunity to work with other speakers and be on their platforms. Whatever method that you're thinking about is pretty much captured in this book. And so we intentionally put together a resource that would be an entry point. And Valerie, there's no, I haven't found one. I don't think there are any degrees or even minors at any accredited universities across the country that will prepare you for the professional speaking industry. But if there was a professional speaking one-on-one somewhere on campus, this book was designed with the intention that it would serve as the textbook for that class.
Absolutely. When I started it, I just said, this is just for me, because again, now, Brian, my followers have heard me talk about this story, but I just want to share it with you personally and my listening audience, those who have not heard me say this. When I was younger, when I was in my early to late 20s, and I started hearing everyone talking about purpose. Why are you putting in the earth? And so I was listening to one of those talk shows. This is how long ago it was. Is either Sally Jesse Raphael or Phil Donahue. I can't remember whose show it was, but they had this gentleman on. Yeah, no, I'm dating myself. I know, Brian. So, and he was talking about how to find your purpose. So he said, whatever you were doing naturally when you were a child, that would give you a clue. And he said, if you don't remember, talk to somebody who was around you when you were young. So, okay, who else would you talk to? Your mom, right? So I called my mother, and I had my paper and pencil ready, and I was just ready. I was excited. I knew she was going to give me something life-changing. And I said, Mom, blah, 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 blah. And I told her what happened. And I said, okay, so what was I doing? The first thing she said to me, Brian, was nothing. The good thing was I kept listening, because the next thing she said was, all you ever did was talk all the time and tried to help people. I said, okay. So as wounding as that was for a minute, salve got on top of it, healed from that. And from then on, started my journey in trying to figure it out. And just like we hear a lot of professional singers, they started in church, right? Well, so even though I wasn't brought up in church, because my father was military and then I went in the military, because I love the Lord, and I went, and I started that when I was young with my own study and my own prayer time. When I went into church, okay, so as soon as people started hearing my voice, and because I studied the scriptures so much, it was just a natural segue into that. But what I also knew was it still didn't satisfy something. I didn't know what it was. So last year when I came to BSN and I started listening to the other speakers speaking with so much passion about what they were speaking about, I still knew I was missing something, that one driving thing that I wanted to talk about, not just all of this stuff. But this book right here, as soon as they released it, Brian, okay, as soon as they released it, I bought mine, and I paid to have it shipped to me like today. I want that. I want my book now. And just reading the first 3 chapters, all of a sudden it was like, there it is. There it is. That's what I need to be doing. Now I know. So I'm not doing this just to promote BSN. I am not. I'm telling you that, and I'm going to say this, Brian doesn't know I'm getting ready to say this. I'm going to also go out on the limb and say this. Even if speaking might not be your number one thing, there are still things in this book that can help you, lead you down the road where you need to go. And even if it's not necessarily being a professional speaker, you still have to speak in whatever you do. And so it will help you do that as well. So Brian, can you give me permission to go out on a limb and say that?
Absolutely. 100%.
So tell me, so I want to get to your section before we have to end the broadcast, because I get excited about my guests and I'm ready to have a 2-hour show and I have 30 minutes. So what I want to do before we talk about this part of this book, I want to talk to Brian specifically about, I want to remind my viewing and listening audience that I'm Valerie Gilchrist. This is Esther's Purpose. We're broadcasting from WYTV7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, WYTV7 is a nonprofit organization. Please go to WYTV7.org, click that donate button and donate so we can have more guests in our show like Brian Oles today and talk about what his passion is and what he's doing for speakers around the world. And we can talk about your passion as well. But those funds are also used to actually fund other nonprofit organizations as well. So Brian, I just read afresh again your chapter on Find Your Stage. And there were 3 principles that are in this book that just, And I mean, the whole thing did, but the three principles is what we've got time for today. And y'all know, my audience, y'all know Brian probably gonna come back and talk about this book some more because I bring people in like more than one time when I'm really excited about them. So we're just gonna touch on these three principles and then we'll bring Brian back later, okay? So Brian, let's talk about these three principles. Can you, and I know you have the book, I've got my book in front of me. So let's do principle number one, finding your stage. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the chapter is find your stage, and then I think principle one talks about that this is the long-term relationship business. And so yes, I think again, the double-edged sword about the speaking industry is that anybody can do it and you can start at any time. But the negative about that is that anybody can do it and start at any time. And so sometimes the mindset is a big part of what we try to address with our new speakers. And so when we think about, hey, and it's easy to be seduced by seeing people make a lot of money, on stage. It's like, yeah, I want to, raise your hand if you want to check for $10,000 for speaking for 60 minutes, like everybody, right? And so that's an attractive thing. However, what we try to let people know is that that person that you see making $10,000 on stage has been at this 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years. And so while you can there are a lot of ways to make money, and we have an entire section that's focused on monetizing. What we try to help people understand is that this is a long-term business. Like if you're just trying to come into the speaking industry to make, quick money and then go do something else, it's not probably going to be for you, because the thing that's inherent with this business is relationships. Your ability to effectively build one-on-one relationships with the people that will ultimately one day become your clients, that will bring you in to speak, as well as your audience. So that's principle number one, just adopting a long-term mindset and not being so quick. And I think in the book I talked about one of my very first speaking engagements was at the National Society of Black Engineer, and that was a referral through one of my friends that I went to school with, and he brought me in to speak. I don't know if I was good or bad. I just remember doing it, and that was so long ago. But then recently, he brought me back. He's now president of that organization. We kept that relationship, and he brought me back. And so, really, and there was like a 7 or 8 year gap there. So, you have to, and the whole purpose of that chapter is really focused on finding your stage and creating elements that help you get organized as a speaker. Most of us, we may come from industries where we haven't really been in sales or been responsible for deliberately maintaining professional relationships over a long period of time. And so that's some of the things we get into. But that first principle is all about having a long-term mindset and making sure that you focus on building relationships.
Okay, and our principle number two is the finding your stage principle. The first statement you said was stop expecting to be paid a speaker fee for every speaking engagement. Talk about that, because a lot of times we as speakers, we're thinking somebody's going to pay us every single time. And we don't want to sew in and do that work that's necessary and make those kind of sacrifices, because sometimes we put a lot of money up front, right? And we're wanting to get a return, and we forget about the principle of seed, time, harvest. We forget about that principle. So talk about that. Stop expecting to be paid a speaking fee for every speaking engagement.
Yeah, I think there's a limiting belief in this business that the only way you get paid is somebody putting a check in your pocket at the end of your engagement. And so that's really what that's addressing. There are 21 ways, basic, and there's many more, but we talk about 21 ways when we get to that monetization section of how to get paid in this industry. So it really starts with having a strategy. What type of speaker do you want to be? And what I mean by that is, even within BSN, there's so many things. So you have, you mentioned the webinars earlier. You could be paid through webinars. You can be paid through just product creation, books, audio programs, coaching, VIP days. Quinn Conyers is a great example of that. She's one of the co-authors in the book, and we were talking this past week. She actually had a free speaking engagement earlier this week. She had several actually, but she was going to sell the book. That was her original plan. And, she could have probably made, $50, $60, selling her own books. But instead, she actually had a program, which is her true purpose, because, when she's speaking from stage, the goal of speaking isn't typically just to speak, get paid, and go away. It's to continue building your audience, to share your thought leadership, and actually serve people to help them solve a problem. Most people aren't solving actual problems in 60 minutes. You're sharing ideas, concepts, helping people move the needle a little bit. But for the most part, you're going to want to work with them on a longer term basis. And so that's what she did. She used the book and she said, hey, anybody that signs up for my program tonight will actually get a free copy of the book. So she gave the book away and she made over $1,000 in sales. And so the point is that stop expecting to get paid a speaking fee. I think there's two parts to that. One is that just thinking about other ways that you can actually create income and actually having a strategy focused around that. And then the second thing is, if you're new speaking, and when I mean new, I mean if you're less than 5 years in, I don't think you really have the right to be getting overly picky about. Now, that doesn't mean you should be running out, going broke, putting flights on credit cards and stuff like that. You shouldn't be accepting everything under the sun. But at the same time, if you don't have anything going on, you look at your calendar and you're like, oh, Monday, nope, Tuesday, Wednesday, no. You really can't afford to be that picky about turning down speaking engagements just because they aren't paid, because there are a lot of other non-financial benefits associated with those engagements, not to mention your ability to monetize. So that's what that's about.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I as I read it, and because I'm a part of BSN, I knew that, but I wanted you to explain that to the audience, what we mean about about wanting a speaker fee every time you speak. You have to know that you have to be pretty much a serial entrepreneur, if I can use that word. You've got to have different streams. You have to have multiple streams of what you do. You have that core thing that you do as a speaker, but that should then branch out to, like what you said. I see it all the time. I've got a boot camp, I've got a mastermind class I'm going here, come and get on. And even I've seen speakers do, it's a free mastermind class, but even though the mastermind is free, there are other benefits that, to get more information, for me to coach you in this area, for you to be doing some other things. Okay, so there is a fee for this. And so you've got to think a little differently, that you really want to monetize, which that section is in the book too, what you do and who you are, but every opportunity is not necessarily going to give you that right away, write a check and you go out the door. You have to know the business. And so that's another thing I appreciate, about the book. And so your third principle,
I was just going to say, I think the other piece of that is just thinking about what you really need right now, because there are a lot of ways that you can add value to an event, and there are a lot of ways you can extract value. So what do most new speakers need? Well, they need video. So you may not be getting paid, but if you can get a really great video out of that, then that's going to help you bring in more business. You may need photos. Photos to go onto your speaker one sheet, to go onto your website, to be able to share across social media. People, if you're a speaker, we should be collecting evidence that we speak. And so that's going to be helpful. Testimonials. If General Motors invited you in to speak, I'm just using General Motors for example, but LG Corporation invited you in to speak, and you have opportunity to get exposure to that leadership, and they give you a testimonial, and you can put that on your website and your materials. That has value. So I just want us to get away from the idea that the only way to be compensated is through money. And of course, ideally, at the end of the day, we're going to get to that point, but there should be some other things that we think about there too.
Yeah, thank you for adding that, Brian. Absolutely. Yeah, those things as well. Before we end, I want to talk about that principle number 3 in finding your stage. Here's the statement: you are solely responsible for booking yourself to speak. Talk to us about that, because we know as I was reading it, and I just had to kind of laugh to myself, you know, we want an agent right now. We want somebody else to do all that work. We just want to have the glory of going out there and just speaking. We don't want to do that other work. So talk to us about, you are solely responsible for booking yourself to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like you synopsized that perfectly. And what I want to do too is let folks know that if I'm breaking up or not coming through clear, you can email, I'll share my information. If there's any question that you might have missed or you caught something you're thinking, I have no idea what he just said, just drop me a note. I'm super accessible everywhere, as Valerie knows. So be happy to help clarify any of that. But hopefully you're getting the energy and the essence of what we're saying. But yes, you are responsible for, and that's just beyond speed. That's just in business. You know, there are internal and external factors associated with growing any business. If I owned a bakery, right, they could, you know, you're going to be subject to external factors. There may be a hurricane. The price of bread may go up. You know, all these things that you can't control. But at the end of the day, I still got to sell my cupcakes. I still got to sell my cakes, my bread. I'm getting hungry. But that being said, I'm literally going to take control over my business. And speaking, it shouldn't be any different. Like, we should not think that a speaker's bureau, a speaker's agent, you know, having you know, somebody build up our social media, you know, presence, those things are going to lead to speaking engagements. Like, if you're not willing to write content, if you're not willing to go out, and if your friends and family don't know that you're a speaker, I think that's a problem. I think it's a problem if, you know, it's not on your email signature. I think it's a problem if you're not willing to make, you know, 25 phone calls a week to people that don't know, but about their organizations, and figure out if there's an opportunity where you can serve and add value. I think if you don't have anything on your calendar on Wednesday night and you're not willing to go out to a networking event and shake some hands and listen, you know, meet some new people. So those are the activities associated with building this business. You know, the speaking opportunity isn't going to attack you. You have to go out and get it. And the myth that I try to dispel within for our new speakers is that, you know, bureaus are great, but most speakers only get benefit from bureaus once they're at that point in their career where they realistically don't need a bureau. So that's not, you know, your answer. The answer is to do the work and, you know, get excited. And if you need strategies, that's what this is for.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Brian. Thank you for that. So I know Brian and I keep flashing this book. We keep flashing it because we want you to go out and get this book, because everybody has a story. Everybody. And there are different ways that you can share your story, and different markets that you can share your story in. So even if you might not have thought you wanted to be a speaker, once you get this book and you read this book, and you can get it on Amazon, it's there, it's ready for you. Type the title in, get the book and read it. You might find a passion that you didn't even know about, that there is something deep inside of you that you really do want to share with the world and let them know. You've pioneered something, you've championed something. There's a cause somewhere in your heart that people need to know about. So everybody needs this book. So I'm gonna go out on the limb and I'm gonna say it. I really believe it. I'm not just saying it because Brian's on the show or that I'm a speaker. I'm telling you, if I had this book when I was younger and all I was doing, as my mom said, was talking all the time trying to help people, this book would have helped me, because then I would have found my place. I would have known even then that there's a place out there for me. But Brian, before we end, I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to let everyone know all your handles, how to get in touch with you. If they want you to come to be a speaker, if they want you to come talk about your book, if they want to ask you a question, if they want to be a member of BSN and said, okay, before I do, let me talk to them a little bit. And I'm telling you, Brian is not kidding. Brian, we have talked. This is the first time we've talked together where we've seen each other. And I'm just going to say this, because I want you all to know this. Brian has a big heart of compassion. I was out, and many of you know, my audience knows, I was out for 14 weeks from having some pretty major surgery that took me twice as long to handle it. As busy as Brian is, he still connected and said, hey, I'm thinking about you, how you doing? And that spoke volumes for me, for who he is as a person. So Brian, let them know, how can they contact you, get in touch with you, and ask you questions, or have you come speak or be a keynote or do something so that you can still get your message out even further?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you're going to make me go ahead and leave a speechless here. But yeah, I think blackspeakersnetwork.com is the hub. If everybody focuses on that, you can pretty much get everything. Even the link to the book is there. As you mentioned, it's on Amazon. We're really active on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram and Facebook. So on Instagram, we're at Black Speakers Network. Facebook.com/Black Speakers Network. If you want to follow us, we have a group there as well. But I think www.blackspeakersnetwork.com is the place to go if you're interested in taking your speaking. If you've just been thinking about speaking, or if you're already a speaker, we invite you to join BSN. There are 2 levels. There's a free option and there's a silver option, and you can learn more about that. But that'd be the place to connect. And if I can help out in any way, I'll be happy to.
Okay, well, you all heard it. Thank you so much, Brian, for the sacrifice today of coming out. And when I say sacrifice, I don't mean that in a negative light. All of us, we're very busy. All of us are, and we've got things that we're doing. And so when we're asked to do something, we've got to figure it out, right? And fit those things in that, go in alignment with what our passion is. So I really appreciate you doing that, because there's many things that you could have been doing. But I so appreciate that you came and spent this time with my audience today and talk about BSN so they can know who you are, that there's a real person behind BSN that motivates it, that has a heart for what this organization does. So thank you, Brian. Hold on for just a minute after we end. I want to thank everybody for watching the show today. I appreciate my audience so very much. Thank you so very much for being on board with us. I do want to make sure that you remember that you can watch us on www.wytv7.org. You can go on there. You can click the link, because we do have 24-hour TV now. So we're on where you can see not just Brian, but you can see every guest I have ever interviewed. You can see them, go back over it. You can go back and watch Brian again and again. Also on Spreaker. It's on YouTube. It's on iHeartMedia. I'm all over the place. People keep telling me, Valerie, you're just all over the place. Well, that's all right. I want to be all over the place to highlight my guests, so you all can see all of the different things that are going on in the world. Sometimes we get in a little box and we don't think that there's a place for us, or there's a lot going on. So go back and watch those other episodes. You'll connect with somebody in there that will maybe grab your passion. So thank you all again. I appreciate you all. Have a great night. Talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.